Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. A very warm welcome to this final day of June live webinar with my friends here from LavenirAI. We've got Bill Michaels and Clive Heal, who are both the co-founders of Lavenir, with us today. Bill, Clive, if you'd just like to say a quick hi and a quick introduction. I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes before we get started in case anyone is trickling in a couple of minutes late. So if you could just give a really quick intro, then I'll run through a couple of housekeeping things, and then it's over to you, gentlemen.
Hey, thanks, James. So I'm Clive Heal, CEO and co-founder of LavenirAI. My background is procurement, both in the UK, Europe, and 20 years based in the US. I'm now back in Europe. So worked for Reckitt Benckiser, PwC as a management consultant, Prudential, SmithKline, GlaxoSmithKline, and over in the US, I worked for Genentech and Roche, and now back in Europe, as I said. So my background is a procurement professional, but also ran the innovation center at Roche for 6 years as well. So procurement and innovation.
Hi, and I'm Bill Michaels, and I've had a long career in procurement and supply chain, starting my career in corporate life, and I had several management positions in the paper industry, the food industry, the business machines industry. Went on then to consulting, had a big, long career in consulting, did transformational change. And one of my first clients, we went in, we changed the processes, the strategy, and we delivered $400 million on $1 billion spend. So that helped that. And then to do a good transformation, you really have to do training and development and change the behavior of people. So a lot of our work in the consulting side was transformation or development of teams. And then from there, I sold the business to the Institute for Supply Management, went on to work with SIPs and help SIPs start their US business. And then Clive and I got together, founded Lavenir, and we're trying to help people learn how to negotiate.
And I love both of your stories because a lot of founders in this space don't come from procurement, and it's great to have two elder statesmen of procurement, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, on with me today, because you're definitely not sales and marketing bros or anything like that. So it's really cool to have to have such experience with us. For those of you that are watching live, if you could just pop in the comments on LinkedIn where you're joining us from. I'm always interested to see where everyone joins these from and where we've got an audience coming in from. If you're wondering why I'm wearing a red and white striped jersey, it's because for those of you that were following it, Paraguay beat Germany on penalties in the World Cup last night, and it was probably one of the biggest shocks, or the biggest shock so far of the tournament. And I actually live 6 months a year in Paraguay, so I know how much it means to the people down there. And there was a huge party, I'm sure, in Asuncion last night, just looking at some of the pictures. So yeah, just pop in the comments where you're joining us from, and if you have any questions that you want me to put to Clive and Bill as we go through. A little bit of housekeeping. This will last approximately 45 minutes. So we'll be doing the main content for about 35 minutes, and then we'll have sort of 5 to 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. If there's any question that comes up during the session that's absolutely relevant to what Clive and Bill are presenting or talking through at the time, I will flash it on the screen, and we'll tick those questions off if they're relevant to the section of the session. If they're a little bit more generic, then we'll leave time for those at the end. So the webinar, guys, is called Everything We Teach About Negotiation is About to Change. So over to you. What is it that you think will change quite drastically, and what do you think will stay the same? And we have got some visual materials to support this as well as some screen time to show you a bit of the product too as we go through.
James, let me pick that one up. I think the classic negotiation principles aren't going to change. I think what changes is that negotiation itself sits inside of an AI-enabled system going forwards. We're talking about, and we'll get into it more about what that's going to mean in terms of preparation, what that's going to mean in terms of a simulation, coaching, the analytics that we're going to get. And we're going to certainly talk later about how the whole negotiation process is radically going to change. But if you sort of step back, I mean, I think the on the tactical side, you've got autonomous negotiation, right? So there's at least 10 companies in that space now. You got Pactum, Zycus, Merlin to come in. You got Nibble, ProcureAI, Keelvar, Baronamu, Starworks. There's loads, right? There's at least 10 flip through. And so on. There's at least
there's a bunch of them.
There's loads of in that tactical side, and I think that's great, because I think that gives value for the tactical negotiation. I think the strategic negotiation, though, is going to become even more human led and even more supported by AI, both in the prep, the doing, and the post negotiation stuff. And so the change is that strategic negotiation space and what that's going to look like, and it's going to get very analytical, very defined. We're really talking about how do we get behavioral fluency. So how do we get people really behaving and acting in better ways in their strategic negotiation? So that's, for me, what it's all about. It's that AI framework that we're going to sit inside, and I'm talking about both the prep and the real negotiations. Bill?
And I think that's actually true. When we start to look at the customers now that are using our tool, one of the things is there's a lot of new people coming into the profession, and they're really not comfortable dealing in social settings with people, and some people are introverted. And what we find is that when you give them an opportunity to practice, and you use someone they can practice with, they tend to make their outcome better. They tend to be more confident. And so we're trying to really help people change their behavior, change their style, understand that it takes different styles, and really look at it. And if we look at the future, we see a time where we actually can profile what suppliers will say. We actually see that we can practice in simulation, and we also see that we can get to a point where we actually have AI coaching us through the process. So things are going to change.
So how do you think then? I mean, we mentioned a bunch of tools that support sort of tactical autonomous negotiations. So you made that distinction, and I think it is an important distinction. Where do you think these autonomous negotiation tools, whichever one you pick, will be able to legitimately take over, rather than it just being a gimmick or marketing? And which ones do you think are still going to need very much, the human-led approach?
I don't think. Go ahead, Bill. Go ahead.
I take a crack at that. So we have some companies in the utility industry, and they're dealing with nuclear waste disposal. So they got 140-year contract for the life cycle of the waste. They have privacy, they have protection, and that takes them sometimes a year or two to negotiate that. And I see simple tactical leverage kind of items fit the mold where the autonomous bots can work. But when it gets to defense strategies or programs like that, it requires really requires analysis, human interaction, coordination, and that's where I think the bots fall short.
James, I think as you move from tactical to strategic, the variables become greater. It's not just a price driven event, right? Let me give an example. When you're negotiating a strategic contract, right, or a strategic negotiation, there are multiple variables. If you can quantify the relative values for each of those, you can then more automate it. I'll give you an example, right? I'm running a construction project, right? Is it more important that I get it delivered on time at cost X, or is it better that I get it delivered a month later at cost Y? Well, what's the value of that? I'll give you another example, right? Where I live here, they're building a hospital right now. We have a new hospital being built. And so the question there would be, are you willing to pay more to have the hospital launched on time, or pay a little bit less and have it launched a month later? But then all those patients that would have gone to the hospital for that month aren't able to go to the hospital. So these are like strategic decisions that you have to make. So the more complex that what it is you're managing, the more variables you have. If you can codify and quantify, well, the value of waiting an extra month is this, or the value of getting extra qualities, or would you rather have a sustainable product or or something from recycled material, or would you rather have virgin unrecycled material? Well, how much more are you willing to pay for that to get that benefit? So if you can quantify relatively and meaningfully the relative values of those different things you're negotiating, then in theory you could automate it, in my mind. But if you can't, and it comes down to human perspective, then you have to think about that. And I'll give you another example as well, right? It might be worth giving a concession to somebody to maintain the relationship, right? So is technology at the moment going to be able to say, well, actually, we want to retain the relationship, so we'll give that concession for that particular point, because that's actually more important to retain the relationship. So I think it's about how many variables are there that you're having to negotiate, and can you create an algorithm or relative calculation to show the values of each? Because the more you can codify it, the more you can automate it. But if you can't, and there's a human factor in it, that's where it's strategic. So I think the two come together. I think we're going to close the gap, right? The gap being, everything is either autonomously negotiated or it's like a human. The great thing is there's more time now for humans to do those negotiations, and they're going to be way, way, way better prepared now than we were 6 months ago. And in the future, that'll get even more dramatic in terms of how we can support people.
Clive, to add to that, when we look at strategic versus tactical negotiations normally is one time you're going to create a deal. There's lots of options in terms of supply base, and you can do that pretty easily. When we get to strategic negotiations, it's really relationship and principally based. So you really have to do that. And one of the things right now AI can't do, but will maybe have the capability in the not so distant future, is emotional intelligence. So one of the early experiences I had is I was working with a very large food company. They had 3 can suppliers, and we were looking at rationalizing the supply base down to 2. And if we did that, one supplier would come out of business because they had 90% of their capacity on this particular company. Now, you have to really understand that if you're looking at the mathematics and the logic, it made more sense to go to 2, take the savings, and allow 2 different lines to run it without having any adjustment in the height of the can. So, but if you looked at taking out a total supplier that's not going to be there after you make that decision, that's something that the AI is not capable of doing at the moment.
So what we're saying essentially is then that what you've developed in some of these autonomous negotiation tools, they could, in a mature procurement organization, quite easily coexist. They're not, you don't have a competitive product essentially, because there's a different use case for each one, and it's just a case of what context would you deploy it, and what would you deploy it under?
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think relationship is the difference right there. It's, what is the relationship and how long will the relationship be intact? So if you're a pharmaceutical company, you've got a patent with an active ingredient, that's going to be a long-term relationship for many, many years. And you've got to be collaborating across the supply chain over time to know when to expand, when to add capacity. And then at the end of the life cycle of a pharmaceutical product, you got to know when to reduce the price and go to generic. So those are some of the things that are really critical.
Okay, I think that's a great backdrop. So what I want to move on now to is around the concept of negotiation training, and how negotiation traditionally has been trained to, well, not just to procurement professionals, also to salespeople too. That you would come into an organization, and if you joined, especially if you joined cross-functionally and you didn't have a procurement background, maybe you came from operations or from finance, if you just missed the typical annual negotiation training and you've got to wait 11 months until the next one, you're kind of hamstrung a little bit, aren't you, in terms of, there's a certain amount that you can teach yourself, but this is pretty high stakes stuff. And if you're coming into a commodity manager, category manager, sourcing manager role, and you're expected to negotiate with suppliers, and you've had zero background in doing that, other than, maybe negotiating a secondhand car or something you've bought off Facebook Marketplace, no matter how good this negotiation training is that you go through once a year, and don't get me wrong, I was really happy with the negotiation training that I got back in my corporate career. There are some very, very competent providers out there, but it's a little bit like going to the gym, isn't it? Unless you go 3 times a week consistently, you're not going to build reliable, consistent muscle and see consistent gains. And I would liken that to negotiation or mastering any sort of skill, really. So walk me through a little bit why that approach isn't enough. But I think what I'm trying to get at is, what is it that you've built that you see as being fundamentally different? Because I think once we've set that context, I'd like to sort of flash on the screen the product a little bit and walk through a little bit around how it does that.
Okay, I think I'd say that. So preparation is going to be really one of the battlegrounds in the future, right? How are you preparing? And on an individual level, that's about ongoing development. As you said, James, that's like on a daily, weekly basis. How are you practicing that? And so what the technology allows us to do now is, one of the things is simulation, right? So the ability to simulate negotiation. So the ability, and we can show that in just a second if you want, the ability to interact with sales avatars that have different personas, so different behavior styles, to be able to practice negotiating. So the practice is done in a safe environment. You can try different ways of negotiation. We'll come back to that in a second, to really improve your negotiation skills. So we'll just show some of that in a second. So what's basically happening is, in the learn, practice, feedback loop, you've got the ability to learn, which is you can get in a one-day workshop, but the ability to practice and get feedback is what's so important. And then when you're negotiating with sales avatars, the avatars are able to, the algorithms behind the avatars are able to, and I'm talking about conversational AI, so you can say whatever you want and the avatar negotiates back with you, right? So, but the algorithms behind the avatars are tracking the arguments that you're making and the power of the language that you're using. So in the negotiation toolkit, you know, that everybody in procurement has, there's about 40 different argument types, right? And you could think of some of those as carrots and some of them as sticks. It's interesting that we got about 3 times as many sticks as we have carrots, actually. I'm not sure what that says about procurement, right? But a stick might be competition, right? Is competition valid in this particular situation? Can I use competition to really put pressure onto the supplier? A carrot might be the growth potential of our business. Our business is actually going to grow 20% next year. If we can come to some agreement, you know, we're both going to win, and you'll get more business sort of going forward. So it's what argument types am I going to use? What's relevant to this situation? So that's something that you can learn by practicing and doing. But also there's a human element as well, James, as well. The person that you're negotiating against, the salesperson you're negotiating with, right? He, she, they have a persona, they have a style, they have a way of negotiating as well. And so it's important to understand both your style, but also the style and the persona of who you're negotiating. So what we can show you right now, if you want, is how do you practice that by negotiating with sales avatars with different personas. Yeah.
And I have a comment, James. I mean, I experienced exactly what you said. I came into a new organization. I think I was 22 years old. I went to my Karis negotiating class, came out. It was probably 6 months before I had a big negotiation, and I had the CEO of a big chemical company and as executive vice president. I didn't stand a chance as a young person. And as an instructor, I probably have done hundreds, if not thousands, of negotiation classes in my career. And it's very, very hard. For one reason, you got 25 people. Let's say we're going to do some work case studies, and I break them up to one-on-one. So I have a group of 12. I give them 20 minutes to plan, 30 minutes to negotiate, and I have to go through 12 groups and look at everything they're doing, their body language. I can't give them the feedback that you want to give them. And then if you try and do a video, they're intimidated. And then I also have a lot of people in HR and some of the procurement guys say, I had this the other day where a private equity company asked me if I could do a half day in negotiation. Well, what half do you want me to do? The planning, the execution? So it was. Yeah. It's really. So you get maybe 4 or 5 days. You don't get to practice, right? I had one group. It was really interesting that there were 2 guys that didn't really like each other, and they got paired together. And the negotiated started off with one guy calling the other guy box boy, and he got really upset, and they got into almost a fist fight. It was not really good. Sometimes you have to negotiate with your boss, and that's uncomfortable. So the experience of working on your own with multiple avatars, with multiple styles, they never react the same. They're always different. I have no idea when I start a negotiation where it's going to go. It's going to go tactical, strategic. I don't know.
Let's have a look. Let's have a look, Bill. Let's have a look at while Bill's just calling it up, right? So the pre-negotiation simulation lets you basically practice interacting with different sales personas, if you like. You can test different openings. You can learn how to handle objections, concessions. It really sort of builds confidence. What we're really trying to get is behavioral fluency, right? It's about people learning what works, what doesn't work, but also they need to learn, and we'll talk maybe more about it in a minute, about their own style in terms of how do I negotiate? What is my style? Can I change my style? What style do I need for the person? Because face-to-face negotiations is a human-to-human interaction, right? That's a social process, and you have to think about, how am I going to influence this person? We'll talk about that in just a second, about learning to influence and what's changing in the future for that. So, Bill.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The different personalities that you get, that you're going to be negotiating against, will be vastly different depending on the context and who it is. You know, the way that you would negotiate against the very stubborn, details-oriented, typical like German or Central European type of persona versus, the gregarious American that doesn't shut up, is going to be like vastly different, right? It's just culturally the way that they operate. So yeah.
Sure. All right, let me go into this. There's 3 parts to our program. One is a planner. So what we found is a lot of customers said the newer people are not really good with planning. So we built a planner where they can go in, answer some tactical questions, answer some strategic questions, create a plan, and then have a dialogue with the avatar about how good is the plan. The first time I asked her, she came up with 23 deficiencies that I need to fix, and she was right. And then we have we have 40 hours of learning, and in the learning, at any time, you can stop and ask an avatar, what does this mean? How does this work in my category? And the avatar will answer it. And then the third part is the negotiation. I'm going to go into this negotiation. I have a choice of 5 avatars. As pretty much the first guy is the one that James first described, which is the analytical, very, very process-oriented. He likes data. He's unemotional. Then there's Anne-Marie, who just tries to try and get her deal done. Ling, who doesn't make decisions. Tony, who is the American that was described by James. And then John. I'm going to pick Stefan because I know Stefan pretty well. And so you get a case study. In this particular case study, Stefan represents a supplier that's just been brought in by management. This is a food company. They had a problem with the past supplier who was cleaning their manufacturing equipment and actually didn't clean the meat slicer. They had listeria. They got some people sick and killed a couple of people. And so they don't want to change anything, but he's a bit bold, and he's come in with a price increase, and my job is to actually talk to him and see if I can make the price increase go away. He has some technology. I know he has it, but he has not yet told me about it. So let's see how it goes.
The floor is yours and Stefan's.
Hello, Stefan. To see this. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself? Any plans for the weekend?
Not really. I mean, just kind of hanging around. And again, I'm Bill. Hey, look, I got back to my office, and I'm relatively new here, and I was shocked to see that you'd sent me a price increase for 9%, and we're supposed to be strategic partners, and you didn't even give me a heads up about it.
Bill, I understand your surprise and concern about the 9% price increase, especially without prior notice. Let's discuss your current situation in detail so I can better understand your perspective and we can explore options together.
Well, I am disappointed you didn't let me know in advance, and my team's kind of mad at me, and it's very embarrassing. But I don't think you can justify a 9% price increase.
Bill, I appreciate the pressure you're under, and I want to be transparent. This past year has been challenging for all of us, and the 9% increase reflects the additional cleaning work and resources now required to maintain the highest sanitation standards in your plant.
Well, look, I get that. But look, you came in here with 8 people, and now you're down to 5. So you've taken 3 people out of your process, you've reduced your cost, and you've improved your process, and your performance has been excellent. So I don't think you can justify a price increase of 9%, especially with the things you're trying to justify.
Bill, you are correct that we've optimized our team size and improved processes through automation, which should reduce labor costs over time. However, in the short term, we are facing increased costs in materials, labor market pressures, and overhead. Let's work together to find a balanced approach that addresses these challenges while maintaining the quality and safety standards you expect.
Look, here's the deal. What would I need to do to make the price increase go away? You're on a year-to-year contract. What do I need to do to make this price increase go away? Because we're going to be fighting this battle year after year.
Bill, I understand your concern about recurring price increases. If we agree to a 3-year contract, I can reduce the price increase impact to 5%. For a longer-term agreement, I can eliminate the increase altogether. Additionally, if we incorporate our new cleaning technology into the contract, we can further reduce costs. This approach provides stability and value in the long run.
Look, I'll tell you what. Here's what I think I'd like to do. I'd like to make a proposal that I give you a 5-year deal. You eliminate the price increase, and because of the automation, we will actually pilot your robotic automation program and be a use case for your company. And what I'd like is a 15% reduction up front, 1% productivity years 2 through 5. Can you do that?
Bill, I appreciate your willingness to commit to a 5-year deal and pilot our robotic automation program. We do have new robotic equipment that can bring significant benefits. However, in the short term, we still need the price increase to maintain our margins and continue investing in these innovations. If you agree to work with me on this, I will prioritize your company for the pilot program and ensure you receive the best support.
Well, you tell me I'm your number one customer, so I expect to be prioritized first anyway. But I would like for you to really consider what I'm saying. What's the value of a 5-year contract to you? What's the value of having a customer give you referrals on your robotic equipment? It's worth more than I'm asking for. 15% reduction up front, and then 1% productivity year on year, no price increase.
Bill, I agree with your perspective and recognize the strategic value a 5-year contract and your referrals bring to us. I am committed to working with you to find a solution that balances your requests with our operational needs. Let's continue this dialogue to reach an agreement that benefits both parties.
Look, here's where I'm going. I got a meeting with my team on Thursday. We're going to decide some things. Give me a proposal. I hate to do this to you by tomorrow. And tell me what you're willing to do. You know what I'm looking for. So if you can give me a proposal tomorrow, tell me what you're willing to do. I'll look at it, talk to my team, and then we can decide where we're going to go.
Bill, to prepare a clear and tailored proposal for you by tomorrow, could you please summarize your key points and priorities? This will help me understand exactly what you need and why you believe the 9% price increase should be reconsidered. That way, I can ensure the proposal aligns with your expectations for your meeting on Thursday.
Okay, I already told you what I need. I'll tell you why the 9% doesn't work. Because if you use your robotic equipment, you take all the labor out or most of the labor out, and you reduce your costs significantly. I understand there's an R&D investment you're looking for a return on, but I'll help you get that return. So that's what I'm looking for.
Bill, I understand your point about the robotic equipment reducing labor costs and the potential for a quicker return on R&D investments. However, in the short term, we still require the price increase to maintain our margins and continue funding these innovations. If you collaborate with me on this, I will prioritize your company for the pilot program to help realize those savings sooner.
I don't have a lot of time to argue, so send me a proposal, whatever you're willing to do by tomorrow, and I'll look at it and talk to my team about it. Is that okay with you?
Bill, I understand the urgency. I'll prepare a proposal reflecting what we've discussed and send it to you by tomorrow. Please review it with your team, and we can continue the conversation from there.
Perfect. All right. Sounds great. Goodbye.
Thank you, Bill. I look forward to our continued collaboration. Have a great day.
I only got 59%. Oops, I just missed my feedback.
Oh yeah, go back to that. I want to see what, how does it rank you?
I'm getting there. Okay. That's today. Okay. I didn't mention that, that we, the listeria thing and how he's been helpful. I did mention the new technology and capitalized on it. I did a good job talking about a long-term contract. I didn't mention competition, where I could have used some competition, could have used competitive threats. I didn't really go into any real detail about what I expect in the contract terms and how I expect them to do it. I didn't mention the improving the quality of the service. These are all the algorithms looking for learning points that we want people to get out of this. So the algorithms tracking that. I demonstrated a desire to be strategic, and I could have used some power words that might have made a big difference. So that's pretty much it.
So the important thing here, James, is the opportunity to repeat this. Okay, so get the feedback, go in, try it again, try some different arguments, try some different languages, and get a better score. And clearly, we can demonstrate that people's scores do improve really quickly the more that they practice their negotiation. So if you step back, right, first of all, you've got to prepare for the negotiation. We got a strategy planner that helps you answer a series of questions, and it will create a negotiation strategy for you. Then you've got that opportunity to practice as well. Another thing we mentioned earlier is about a style analyzer, to really understand your negotiation style, because we all have different styles of how we like to negotiate, which means that we're strong in some areas, but it means we maybe have blind spots, or we're not particularly good when we engage with certain types of people. So it's important to understand your style as well. And then in the future, that feedback that you saw on the screen there will actually be interactive through an avatar, and she will talk to you about what you did well, James, where you could have improved, some ideas you might want to try going forwards in the future. So this is all of the preparation, if you like, for a negotiation. But rolling forwards to this, and this is where the whole negotiation space is going to change for strategic negotiations, right? We're going to be able to do, we're already working on now, a lot of things in the real detailed stage. And let me explain what I mean. So preparation, we're going to be able to create avatars that have the personas of the real salespeople you're about to meet for a real negotiation in a couple of weeks' time. So before you come and negotiate with somebody in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be able to create an avatar that has that person's persona. You're going to be able to practice negotiating against that avatar to learn what works, what doesn't work. We're also going to be able to create an avatar, James, that actually has your persona, and we're going to be able to run 1,000 simulations. So if James says this, what's that salesperson going to say? If that salesperson says this, how's James likely to respond? So because we're going to be able to run simulations, and you're going to be able to practice with an avatar representative of the salesperson, we're going to be able to work out the best arguments to use, the best language to use, and actually estimate the probability of success of the outcome of that negotiation in terms of how well is it likely to go based on these simulations. So that's the whole pre-negotiation bit. When you get into a real negotiation in the future, we're going to be able to support you as you're negotiating. There's actually a slide on this, slide 14, if you want to call up slide 14. But
Slide 14, we're
going to be able to prompt and verify and track and coach you as you're negotiating. So what's happening is, as you're on a Zoom Teams Meets call with a real salesperson, we're going to be able to prompt on the screen in front of you. So James, remind him about the 3 other suppliers you got, or James, remind her about the quality problems you had last year. So prompt you in terms of what you should and could be saying
against the brief that you give it, then, right? So
yes,
you're going to be able to give it the context, and you're also going to be able to give it, or it's going to remember a little bit like, I guess, if anyone's used Claude Cowork on here, this is probably the best example I can use. I use it myself.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell Claude Cowork in your About Me file about your personality, about your business, about your work, about your hobbies, and it remembers that, so you don't have to keep putting it into the chat. So what you're saying is it's like a similar kind of context that
exactly following the transcript, following the interactions, and prompting you at the right time for the arguments that you should be making at that time. The second thing we're going to be able to do is verification of data. So if the salesperson says to you, yeah, James, that's because the price of polyethylene has just gone up $10 a kilo, and it'll actually be able to come up and say, no, that's not true. Polyethylene prices have actually fallen this week by $6 a kilo or whatever. So it's going to be able to give you verification of facts that are thrown in. We're also going to be able to give you coaching as well, in terms of, James, keep pushing her on this one. It looks like she's going to concede. Or James, she just made you an offer, you missed it. Ask her to repeat what she just said. So the coaching as you're negotiating. And then one of the things that we're already working on is every utterance to be analyzed, and every utterance that you make, every utterance that the supplier makes, to analyze that in terms of, is this moving us towards a agreement, or is what you just said actually moving you away from agreement at the moment? So, and vice versa for the salesperson as well. So this emotional intelligence that Bill talked about earlier is coming as well. The emotional intelligence to really support what you're doing as you're negotiating, and guiding you towards a collaborative solution, or a successful outcome, if that's the way you want to go as well. So we're going to see big changes in the real negotiation, and then post negotiation, the ability to analyze the transcript and learn everything that, what did you do well, what did you miss, what did we find out about you, James, in terms of how well you were under pressure? Or what did we find out about the salesperson in terms of how she was when you gave her a lot of data, and was she able to handle it? Or did she actually then concede a few points because she couldn't handle the data? So the whole negotiation process is going to change as well. I'm talking about strategic negotiation process in terms of how you prepare, how you actually interact when you're actually having the real negotiation, and then the learning from after. So we're going to get down to real micro learning. Not this, it's sort of AI sort of is becoming your sort of co-pilot through the process, if you like, before, during, and after. And also, I'll give you another example, the value quantification that we talked about. If an offer comes on the table from the supplier in the negotiation, you're going to need to quantify the value of that. And is that worth me having that or not? And is it worth conceding this to get what was just offered? So the training, that negotiation training, is going to need to adapt to the new reality of what does a real negotiation, strategic negotiation, look like.
So if I play devil's advocate for a second, then if it can do what or if you've got on your roadmap to do that it will essentially be an AI co-pilot during a negotiation. And I think that's brilliant, especially for a rookie negotiator or someone that's new. I'm just looking at Christine's comment that I'll just flash up on here really briefly. I think to her point, that's absolutely relevant. Something like that is superb to someone early on in their career, or perhaps someone that's made a cross-functional move. But how do you then prevent that from being the tail wagging the dog? Because you don't want it to realistically take over human judgment, right? There has to be some boundaries. So could one of you maybe walk me through how you would tackle that?
Yeah, I can answer that. So with these prompting in a live negotiation, you can turn up or down the threshold at which they come up in front of you, right? So you could choose to have lots of these coming up, but then you're sort of being bombarded by information, and you're really being driven by the technology. Or you can set threshold quite high, so only big points actually come out that you need to be aware of. I don't think it takes away the fact that it's a human talking to a human. It's just that it's an augmented negotiation. So instead of autonomous negotiation, it's a human augmented negotiation. And in my mind, the human element becomes more important than it was before, because the AI is providing us with all these tools and support to be able to better negotiate at a micro level, in terms of what are the words I need to say and how do I need to say it, as well as the arguments I need to say to more effectively bring us towards a successful conclusion. And as I mentioned, with the tracker that we have, that you can actually see how everything either party says, is it moving them away or together towards a potential outcome.
A couple of things too, James. And when we're looking at what are some of the biggest changes right now, we have actually been experimenting with putting knowledge into the avatar. So the avatar now can come in. We actually pay for some created data, and they would know the supply market, the suppliers, what the situation is, especially if we build a custom case study for a customer on their category, their contract. It has the knowledge of the suppliers, the marketplace, today's price. So when you're negotiating with the avatar, you really have to get your information together. You get your program together. Now, as we see what's happening in negotiation, we have more information now than we ever had in our lives. I put in a thing to Claude the other day, asking it to profile my personality and tell me what I was like, what was my hot buttons, and how should you negotiate with me. And he came out with a full-blown personality profile, which was pretty good.
Frightening.
Yeah.
So think about every conversation being a learning asset, right? Every conversation that you have is a learning opportunity for you, for the individual, to learn how did that influence the person that I'm talking to. And now, because our AI is going to be able to analyze that conversation utterance by utterance, you're going to get down to a micro level understanding about what really helped there, in terms of, did it influence the outcome? Did it get us to a more successful outcome? I think another point I'd like to make, James, is I really think that we're going to have to spend more time on collaboration in the future. Competition is great in a tactical situation, in a leverage situation. I just feel that it's that human relationship, that collaboration, that willingness to try to work together for a win-win, I think ultimately is where we're going to have to shift our focus more. Let the technology do the tactical, maybe do some of the leverage, using the competition, but how do you work towards a collaborative outcome that benefits both parties longer term?
And the other thing that's interesting is, in about 2 months, we're going to come out with 4 languages. We'll be able to speak in French, German, English, Spanish, Portuguese. All right. So people can practice in their native language. They can practice in English. So it really makes a big difference. Some cultures are locked in with their languages, and some of the category managers are really kind of local and managed locally. And right now they don't have a big exposure to being able to try and drive it. So
from a CPO perspective, negotiation is going to move from being an individual skill to an AI-enabled enterprise capability, right? How do you increase the enterprise capability of your team so that they become better negotiators, for the people that are doing the strategic negotiation? How do they prepare better? How can they practice more? How can they perform and get support as they do it? How can they be analyzing their behavior, and how can they be improving continuously? And I mentioned before it's about behavioral fluency. It's about you've done it 1,000 times, and therefore you know what you're doing. You've become a master. Historically, we've improved negotiations by screwing up on some and doing well on others, and learn by our mistakes. Right? That is not acceptable from a procurement perspective. Every individual has to have the capability and the skill set through learning, practice, feedback to be able to become better negotiators and deliver more value for their organizations.
That's it. Yeah, you wouldn't accept factory waste in that manner, would you? And no. It's that, okay, we produced 1 million components, but we weren't very good at the start, but now we're okay.
Yeah. I got to tell you, in all transparency, though, it's not all a picnic. I mean, one of the challenges that we have is some companies mandate training and others don't. And they say, okay, we're going to let people
Yeah.
be on their own, but they want people to use the tool and do the tool. So we have put together gamification programs and things to kind of help people. If they don't get used to the technology right away, sometimes they're afraid of it. So we have to really, really work hard with our customer base to get everybody engaged, everybody on board. And we actually are doing sessions where we do a case study and then have someone come in and do some workshops, mini workshops, to kind of help them through what could they have done better, how could they do it, what's the next challenge they have. And so getting engagement is definitely a thing. So hopefully more and more companies will encourage people to do it, and we'll kind of do more of the mandating thing.
Awesome. Okay, guys, I'm just conscious of the time, and I want to give anyone a chance to ask a question if they do, just before we wrap it up. So if anyone in the audience does have a question for Bill and Clive, please pop it in there now. I appreciate that we have overrun by a minute or two, but I'm happy to take one or two questions before I close this out. So please, if you do have a question, now's the time to pop it in the comments and I'll flash it up on the screen. Okay, there's nothing coming yet. So unless anything pops up in the next 30 seconds, then I think we can close out. So many thanks to everyone that joined today. I hope this was useful in terms of giving you some context of where it's heading and how both these autonomous negotiation tools that you've probably seen or heard of and this new form of consistently improving your negotiation prowess through a virtual avatar can sort of coexist with each other. So it's definitely not a one or the other type of situation. There's a different time and place that you would deploy one over the other. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this up now, guys. There's nothing that's come in. So yeah, appreciate you showing us the tool, and thanks to everyone for joining. We will catch you again. Yes, same time, round about the same time next month. We've got one coming from Valdera in July, which I will announce very, very soon.
Thanks, James. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Good luck in your negotiations.
All righty. Bye for now.
Thanks.